What's up, friends, and welcome into Fantasy Pros, the fantasy football podcast. This is the running back ranks for Week 8. I'm Chris Welsh. We got Pat Fitzmaurice and Andrew Erickson in the house dealing with Buypocalypse. A lot of running backs, 6 teams on bye. That obviously is going to have a pretty large effect on running backs, and you are going to feel it. We've already been feeling the running back threes, you know, the 25 through 36. They've already been kind of gross. You're going to feel it a lot deeper this week, though. You know, waivers kind of pushed you up a little bit. There's going to be, Fitzy, there's going to be some decisions that we're not going to be proud about this week. This is going to be a rough decision-making thing where we're going to have a hard time looking ourselves in the eye for some of the starts that we're going to make.
Yeah, we're going to have to come up with 24 starting running backs in 12-team leagues, and that's going to be tricky. But hallelujah, we do not have to deal with the Seattle running backs this week, though, so we can rejoice about that.
Erickson, are you going to be able to look at yourself in the eye when you're just like, all right, guys, Rashad Smith, top 35 running back this week. Tyler Algier is a lock in the top 25. Like, that's what we're dealing with. That's what we're going to talk about.
I mean, Tyler Algier's playing the Miami Dolphins, so
yeah,
he's locked and loaded, top 24 running back. Let's go.
There it is. I knew it was going to happen. Where will Kyle Monangai rank? He was probably at the tippy top of your waivers. We are going to talk about him. We're going to talk about a big old crew of running backs through the top 36. We'll look at the big board, and we're going to do so using Fantasy Pros ECR, expert consensus ranks, fantasypros.com/rankings. If you guys want to check it out all week long and you want to follow along with us. As a note, though, depending when you're listening to this, there could be some subtle changes in the ranks as people, or some more dramatic changes as well, as people start to submit their ranks, all the expert consensus guys. If you want to hear how the Week 7 ranks finish, you can go listen to the wide receiver show where we did give a shout out to the top 3 who finished in the ranks contest. All right, let's not waste any time. Let's get right into this. Let's jump into the big board for the running backs for Week 8. It starts with Bijan Robinson versus the Dolphins. I mean, if there's a matchup of matchups, this is the one. Coming in at 2 is Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey at 3. Seems pretty standard, those top 3. Doesn't really matter the matchup. Josh Jacobs at 4, Devon Achane at 5, Derrick Henry, James Cook, Saquon Barkley, Javonte Williams, Rachaad White at 10, Quinshon Judkins at 11, and Cam Skattebo at 12. There actually were quite a few questions we could have dug into. Derrick Henry was one that Fitz had put on here. Just for timing purposes, we took off. But I think that's like a legitimate question. People are just like, you know, can I trust him? I think coming off of a bye, if there is a week to trust that he could get back, this is just my note. This would be the week coming off of a bye that they're going to reestablish that. But Rashad White really jumps out here as a top 10 back. And actually, specifically, the guy that he's ahead of, which we're going to touch on, RB 10 for Rachaad White. Erickson is right about at ECR at 11. Fitz, you not so much. You're at 17. So, you know, he's a wide receiver or running back 1 here. You've got him as a mid-tier RB2. What's got you down on Rachaad White versus New Orleans?
So White is at the bottom of a tier for me, Welsh, and that tier includes J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, Chase Brown, Jalen Warren, and Breece Hall. So you could split hairs. I could easily move White up 2 or 3 spots there. I can't quite get him into running back 1 range. The usage outlook for White is pretty good, even though he only had 10 carries against the Lions last week. He was up against a good run defense, and the game script went sideways on the Buccaneers in that game, obviously. But Rachaad White, he's at the bottom of that tier for me because I think he's a worse runner than all the other guys on that tier. 3.9 yards per carry this season, 3.8 for his career. I think all of Dobbins, Swift, Chase Brown, Jalen Warren, Breece Hall, I think they're all better runners than Rachaad White is.
Erickson, you got him as an RB1. It's just a great matchup. It's a really, really good matchup. They lost Mike Evans. We don't know what the weapons are going to be around this team. So because of this last matchup where they kind of got away from Rachaad White and the game script that they might kind of reestablish, that also could mean more Sean Tucker. But what do you think about Rachaad White? You've got him at 11, so 1 spot lower than ECR.
I think that he's a 3-down workhorse. He played 90% of the snaps last week. So I know that they've kind of sprinkled in Sean Tucker here and there, but when push comes to shove, it's Rachaad White's backfield when Bucky Irving's not there. So 90% snap share, that is one of the highest in the NFL among any running back. So that gives Rachaad White a super high floor, and he's game script proof. Doesn't matter whether they're losing, they're winning, he's going to be involved in the game plan. We're talking about all of these receivers for the Bucs. Oh, Tez Johnson, Sterling Shepard, Cameron Johnson, Cade Otton. Well, what about Rachaad White out of the backfield? He can catch passes. He catches targets. So I just think his floor is super, super high. You have a good matchup against the Saints. And I think Rashad White's look significantly better as a running back this year, as a rusher. And I don't know if it's just because Troy Aikman's been pumping his stock on the 2 Monday night games that Rachaad White has been on. But Rashad White is running like a guy who lost his job last year, in my opinion. Bucky Irving outplayed him last year. He lost his job. But this year, among all running backs, Rashad White is number 1 in rushing success rate. So although his yards per carry doesn't necessarily pop off the screen, because I don't think he's ripped off any like really massive runs, he's constantly picking up positive yardage. When it's 3rd and 4, he gets 5. When it's 3rd and 3, he gets 4. So he's moving the chains. They trust him to play all the snaps. And against the Saints have been bad against 2 things when it comes to the run defense. They're bad against outside tackle runs and against stack boxes. Rashad White in those situations, number 1 in the NFL in rushing success rate at 60%. So he's an RB1 for me.
I'll tell you, he's also a running back running like he is going into free agency next year, which he is.
True?
So I think that would be a big piece of it just to throw out to you. So Fitzy's got him at 17. You've got Rachaad White at 11. Going to the next guy, you guys have this flipped. Again, this is more dramatic. And coming off of a 3-touchdown week, I just don't know how I'd ever rank Quinshon Judkins not as like a top 10 guy. He is ECR 11, so he's below Rachaad White in the overall ECR ranks. Fitz, you've got him at 10, but Erickson, you got Judkins down here at 17, so you guys have got that completely flipped. Is the New England defense that much of a worry that Judkins and his 76 carries in this game are not going to be able to get touchdowns and yards?
Yeah, I do think that the Patriots defense is legitimate, especially against the run. They're 3rd in run defense EPA, 6 fewest points allowed to running backs. They've allowed just 2 point yards after contact per carry on design runs this season. That is 3rd lowest in the NFL. And remember, we're going from the worst defense in the NFL against running backs, Miami, to one of the top defenses in the NFL. So this is a stark contrast from what Judkins faced last week in a smash spot, going on the road now against New England. I don't like the spot for Judkins. And although he has been game script proof in some matchups, there have been some times where 2 weeks ago, it was more Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson catching passes because the Browns were losing. So that concerns me if the game script does go south. Is it Judkins still getting a ton of carries? We've seen sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. And the thing I want to point out last week too, and Welsh, I believe it was you that had the Quinshon Judkins, one of his props, right? Was it you bet one of the...
Not this week, but everything was... remember, he opened up at 85, and then it jumped to 95. The rush attempts was the one. I think I told you I liked the rush attempts, which was 20.5, but I like Judkins' props in general.
So the thing that was really interesting about the Miami matchup, so he had 18 carries for 75 yards in the first half, and he didn't do like anything in the second half of the entire game. So Miami Dolphins' terrible run defense was able to bottle up Judkins in the second half. And when you look at his success rate, so on a down-to-down basis, he had a season low in rushing success rate against the worst run defense in the NFL last week against the Miami Dolphins. He had 1 run over 5 yards, which was the 46-yard touchdown. So I don't think Judkins is nearly as bulletproof. And we've seen this before. A couple weeks ago, Chargers running back, Kamani Vidal, monster game. What did he do next week? 20 rushing yards because he wasn't facing the Miami Dolphins. So that is why I pushed Judkins more into the mid RB2 range. Agreed, he still has a floor, but the Browns are no lock to score a touchdown in this game on the road against a pretty good Patriots defense. If he doesn't score, you're left with 60 rushing yards, maybe a catch here or there, and I think that you're feeling a little bit disappointed. So that's why I'm lower on Judkins this week.
On a normal week, I would say a running back at 17 is the start of a guy that you could maybe justify to like not start. So it's like really important. This week, I don't know how anybody wouldn't with like Apocalypse and stuff. But Fitzy, you're on the other end. So again, you're on the positive end of Quinshon Judkins. So let's get all this negative Nancy stuff out from Erickson. And let's hear some positive Judkins talk.
Yeah, I just gotta vehemently disagree with Erickson here. Judkins is a star. Rachaad White is just a guy. It's kind of that simple. And Erickson is kind of casting Judkins as this matchup-dependent guy. He has had tough matchups before. 18 carries for 94 yards and a touchdown against the Packers, who have one of the better run defenses in the league. 21 carries for 82 yards and a touchdown against the Lions, who, by the way, just shut down Rachaad White. Like the Patriots are a tough matchup, no question, but Judkins has done well in other daunting matchups. Really, the only thing I don't like about Judkins is that he has not been very involved as a pass catcher ever since Dylan Gabriel took over as the quarterback. So in Gabriel's 3 starts, Judkins has 3 targets and 1 catch. But I don't know if that's gone away completely because he was catching passes when he was playing with Joe Flacco earlier in the year. So I'd love to get the pass catching productivity back, but I'm still pretty confident about the running production with Judkins, even in the tougher matchup this week.
RB2's coming up here in just a second, but it's offer time because we've got a special offer for you. Unlock a month of Betting Pros Premium for free. Download the Betting Pros app today by using code FP1 month. FP1 month. Get access to tools like the Same Game Parlay tool, the Prop Bet Analyzer, and the Prize Picks Prop Bet Cheat Sheet. Don't miss out. Try it for free 1 month now. Available on iOS and Android. Promo code FP1 month. RB2s. This is RB 13 through 24. It starts off with J.K. Dobbins at 13, DeAndre Swift, Breece Hall, Chase Brown, Jalen Warren, Rico Dowdle at 18, Jordan Mason, Alvin Kamara, Kamani Vidal, Ramondre Stevenson, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, and Isaiah Pacheco. This is kind of the meat of some of the players. We got multiple players we want to talk about. Let's start it off with Chase Brown. Is Chase Brown back? He comes in at RB 16 this week. Everything looks better with Joe Flacco. You guys kind of have an agreement going on here. Erickson's right at ECR at 16. Fitzy, you're at 14. So Fitz, we'll just jump in with you here for a second. You're the positive. Is Chase Brown back in our good graces? Is he back in the circle of trust?
I think he is, Welsh. I know Chase Brown isn't playing quite as much or getting the same sort of massive workloads he was getting last year when he was fantasy monster down the stretch, getting these games where he had all of the carries, all of the running back carries for the Bengals and 90+% of the snaps. He did have 37 carries in the Bengals' first 2 games this year when Joe Burrow was still the quarterback, but Brown's rushing production kind of cratered with Jake Browning at quarterback, although he was still catching some passes. Bengals just weren't moving the ball, weren't picking up first downs. You're not going to have 20 carry games very often when your team can't move the ball. And Chase Brown's rushing totals haven't been great in Joe Flacco's 2 starts, at least not as far as the carry numbers, 9 and 11. But he's averaged 7.5 yards per carry in those 2 games. I'm buying into Chase Brown because I'm willing to buy into the offensive environment in Cincinnati with Joe Flacco at quarterback. And Brown adds value as a pass catcher. He's averaging 4 targets and about 3 catches a game. And we have the rare instance where the Bengals are pretty big favorites this week at home against the Jets. The Jets' run defense has been pretty good, but Brown does have that 2-way value running and catching, and the environment should be pretty run-friendly this week.
Erickson, you technically have Chase Brown above Quinshon Judkins. So that just in itself feels like a statement of trust. But you're right at ECR. Do you feel comfortable again with Chase Brown starting, or is there still a little bit of doubt? Not that anyone's going to have like a bunch of other great options necessarily, but are you feeling a lot better how this offense is moving and that Chase Brown can get going more?
Yeah, I think that this is a prime spot for Chase Brown to have the most carries he's seen since probably week 2 when Joe Burrow last started for the Cincinnati Bengals. Just looking at the optics of this matchup, the Bengals are favored at home against the New York Jets. When's the last time the Bengals were favored? When Joe Burrow was still the starting quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals. This is exactly what we bought into last week when I was trying to push Isaiah Pacheco. It's just, look, he's the starting running back and they're favorites at home by a lot of points. He should produce. And it wasn't a monster game for Pacheco by any means, but it was the best game of the year for him. And he had 15 carries. So I think that this can be more vintage Chase Brown from what we saw last year. I talked about this when I was just a tiny bit lower on some of the Bengals wide receivers, where I don't think this is a 45 drop back type of game for Joe Flacco. I think we can actually get Chase Brown going in this game because we're facing the Jets. They're 0-7, and they're facing the lowest pass rate in the NFL because they're 0-7. Because teams are able to run the ball on them, especially in the second half. So I think that the splits with Samaje Perine, I don't think are going to be as drastic in this particular matchup because the Bengals have been down to start both games the last 2 weeks with Joe Flacco. So they've been kind of forced to air it out. We were playing more at third downs with Samaje Perine out there catching passes. But if they're playing with a positive game script, I think we actually will see Chase Brown push his carries. So it's gone up the last 2 weeks. It was 9, then 11. I think we're going to see Chase Brown north of 13, 14, or even 15 carries. And I obviously like his odds to score a touchdown against, a pretty lifeless Jets defense.
Coming in at number 18, I think we've got a good vibe on what the Panthers are now. Last week, it was kind of it's Chuba, it's Rico, take your sides. And what ended up being is a little bit of everybody, and it hurts everybody. This is going to be some split version of a backfield that maybe, unless you guys are going to feel different, but they proved it to be. I think it was Chuba at 14 carries, Rico at 17. Rico's the better back. I don't think that's a question. And Rico's going to get the edge here. Feel free to throw in where you guys have Chuba here. Chuba is actually going to be in our next section, but 18 at running back, Fitz at 20. Erickson, you're at 19, so you're slightly higher than Fitz, but you guys are both lower than consensus. Do you agree that this is just a messy backfield? Rico's the better guy, and we're looking at pseudo RB. One is an RB2, one is an RB3, but obviously the lean is going to Rico Erickson.
Yes, and that's because Rico has been the more efficient of the two running backs, even though the usage has kind of been split 50-50, and you could actually argue that Hubbard has actually been more of the pass catcher than Rico Dowdle, which is kind of weird because it seemed like in the preseason, Rico Dowdle was going to be the guy that would be operating more on third downs, but that really hasn't been the case. Even this last game, Chuba Hubbard had more targets and ran more routes, but Hubbard still is kind of knocking off the rust. He was less efficient than Rico Dowdle was, and Dowdle's obviously been an absolute monster with the games against Dallas, against Miami, and even against the Jets, who I don't think are a terrible run defense. He was clearly the more efficient back, and in my time doing these rankings, especially when it comes to these muddled backfields, when it's a good matchup, sometimes you just got to start both guys and just hope that they can rip off enough explosive plays and not really get so caught up in who's going to get more touches? If it's the Buffalo Bills, same run defense that it was to start the year where they're just giving up explosive runs left and right, then it's not going to matter how many touches they get. And if the Panthers do what they like to do and establish the run and feature both guys getting double-digit touches, I think both of them can at least be fantasy RB2s. But yeah, I have Rico Dowdle ahead, but Hubbard's not that far behind. He's still a top 24 guy for me.
Dowdle's definitely been an explosive back. Like when you get him that open lane and he just goes, that's what I really, really like about him. Fitzy, what do you think? How far off do you have these guys? I'm going to guess based on your rank, like Rico has got the lean, but is it close as well? Or do you think there's a bigger separator and Rico is going to start separating from the pack?
Close-ish. Welsh, I have Rico ranked RB20 and Chuba Hubbard ranked RB26 because it is a timeshare in Carolina now. With Hubbard back last week, 33 snaps for Dowdle, 38 snaps for Chuba Hubbard, 18 touches for Dowdle, 16 for Hubbard. So this is a 50-50 backfield. And on one hand, the Bills' run defense is not that great, probably objectively worse than the Jets' run defense. But on the other hand, run-friendly game script last week for the Panthers against the Jets, and maybe not as run-friendly a game script against the Bills, who are pretty significant favorites over the Panthers in this game.
I'm going to really be watching as well if they continue the series thing with those two running backs, because I wouldn't hate if they killed the series thing and we got to see more defined roles. Like I think they should have Rico. You want to see Rico in the red zone, let Chuba have third downs, but they're not doing that right now. So just something to watch with that. It is just series. It's just Chuba gets first series, Rico gets a second.
I kind of like the series type of aspect to it, because to me, when you're doing it series by series, it almost puts the running backs incentive to produce, because if you get more carries on your drive, if you do good, right? So if you go out and just get stuffed a bunch of times, now sometimes it's situational based, sometimes you just run a bad play, but I feel like when you do series by series, it's almost like let the best running back win. Right? If Rico Dowdle keeps ripping off all these runs, well, it's like, hey, man, it's my drive. Like, if I get us down to the red zone, I'm punching it in, not Chuba Hubbard. So, but yeah, we'll see how it shakes out.
All right, Kamani Vidal. He comes in at RB21. You guys are a little bit flipped on him. We've got RB22 for Fitz. Erickson is in here at 18. We had a really positive look in that first game, the heavy volume game, 18 carries, rate 124 yards this past week against Indianapolis. Only had 9 carries for 20 yards, which definitely stunk, but he was targeted 5 times out of the backfield. Erickson, you've got him a few spots higher at 18 than his actual ECR. What are you thinking here against Minnesota? Are you liking the matchup? Do you think they're going to reestablish back into volume for Vidal? He's a top 24 back. He's an RB2 this week.
It's not really that I'm expecting this monster rushing game from him, because I don't think the Vikings defense is a total pushover. Now, it depends on what matchups they've had. Again, they stopped Saquon Barkley last week, but is that really, I mean, a lot of defenses have stopped Saquon Barkley this year, so is that really that impressive? Because they've been ripped up by other running backs at other times during the season. So I think it's kind of just like a normal matchup, not like amazing or terrible. But the thing that I love about Vidal, guys with more red zone touches over the last 3 weeks. So that includes the game that Omarion Hampton still started. Running backs. Christian McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor. That's it. Nobody else has more running back touches in the red zone than Kamani Vidal. So I think he has a ton of touchdown equity attached to the Chargers offense. The Chargers could get upgrades on their offensive line. Trey Pipkins and Joe Alt have been practicing this week. So I think that could be a significant boost to the blocking up front to help Vidal in the run game. I mean, and he catches passes. So whatever the game script is, you know he's going to be on the field. And Hassan Haskins is not even playing. So when we're going to, okay, what's his snap share going to be? 75%, 80%? With all the red zone equity, with catches out of the backfield, the usage is just too good for me to not feel confident ranking him as a top 20 running back.
Fitzy, when we look at the running backs, I think we kind of said this at the top. So, like, let's say there's, and I'm going to arguably say it, let's say there's 20 backs. There's 20 backs that you're just like, yeah, those are RB1s and 2s. Then there's maybe a collection, I'm going to call it 5 or 6 guys that are like the other guys. And then it's just like, oh my God, like you can't deal with it. You know, that way you're starting the Algiers of the world and stuff like that. Is Kamani Vidal the end of the I feel good tier, or is he part of the other guys? And I think Chuba falls into the other guy. Again, not like Kamara and ECR is RB20. It's like, cool, we know what that is. But are the other guys, Vidal and Stevenson and maybe Pacheco, who we're going to talk about, what tier range do you view him as?
All right, so I've got the feel-good range goes to 17 at Rashad White, and he's the last guy on that tier. Then I've got sort of a 5-man purgatory, Welsh, before we get to the guys I'm worried about. And that 5-man purgatory tier includes Kimani Vidal. It's Pacheco, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Rico Dowdle, Alvin Kamara, and Kimani Vidal.
Perfect.
So, yeah, I'm kind of straddling the fence with Vidal. I thought he was one of the hardest players to rank this week. Now, it does look like Hassan Haskins is going to be out this week. He's considered doubtful. So the workload for Vidal should be pretty substantial. But, and I can't believe I'm saying this on a team that has Greg Roman calling the plays. The Chargers are a pass-first team now. And I don't know. Like, I worry about Vidal's carry share, and I don't think they're really going to feature him as a pass catcher when they've got 3 good receivers and an emerging star at tight end. So maybe I'm low. Like, Vidal did have 18 carries for 124 yards against the Dolphins 2 weeks ago, but, well, it was the Dolphins. Every running back goes nuts on the Dolphins. Yet I don't think it's fair to judge Vidal on his 9-carry, 20-yard rushing day against the Colts last week, because the game script went completely haywire in the Chargers and they were throwing like crazy to try to catch up. So he's a hard guy to pin down. Big workload share, or a big backfield share, I should say, coming this week. But I just don't know how many backfield touches there are going to be for the Chargers in any given week, which, again, really strange to say for a Greg Roman team.
I like the purgatory line. That's the purgatory tier. And we're going to kind of stick in that tier, especially for you, because the last one we're going to talk about here is Isaiah Pacheco, who comes in as ECR RB24. Again, shout out to Erickson for kind of calling him getting back right. Kareem Hunt got a little bit banged up. They were just able to do a lot of stuff in the running game. Brashard Smith was kind of balling out a little bit. Fitz, you've got him at 18. Erickson got him at 21, so Fitz a little bit of the higher. But you had said the start of your purgatory tier is Isaiah Pacheco at 18, or maybe it was 17, and he's right there. So he's at the tippy top. But this is probably the most aggressive rank you've had on Pacheco since week 1, maybe 2, and then you kind of relented and we brought him back down. So top 20 back for Pacheco this week for you, Fitzy.
I do feel best about him of the purgatory backs because he reassumed the lead back role for the Chiefs 2 weeks ago. And that was before Kareem Hunt hurt his ankle last week. So Hunt's status not entirely clear yet. We should know more after the Wednesday practice report. We're recording this on a Wednesday morning. But Pacheco's had 27 carries and 5 targets over his last 2 games. And even if Kareem Hunt is out, Rashard Smith is going to play some snaps for the Chiefs and take some of the passing down work. But Pacheco should get the goal line work this week. He wasn't really getting it early in the season. Hunt was the goal line guy. But, now Pacheco's the lead back in one of the best offenses in the league. And the Chiefs are double-digit favorites this week against the Commanders at home. The arrow is definitely pointing up for Isaiah Pacheco.
Erickson, do you believe that Pacheco is kind of like that second tier, where it's like, hey, you feel good about the top 17? Would you agree with that? Or do you think, your rank is at 21, so you'd have to have a little bit of a bigger tier that you feel comfortable about. You think he's in that middle? You're just kind of like, I don't know if I feel great, but let's get him in there?
I think you feel good about Pacheco. I don't know if great is probably the right word, just because the Chiefs don't love to run the ball. Like, they'd rather just throw it a million times, especially in the red zone. So that's like the one. And Pacheco's not really involved that much as a receiver. They really like Rashad Smith in that role. I just think he's fine, right? I think he's an RB2. Again, I don't have him I'm have him higher than ECR just because ECR I think is a little low on him at RB24. Fitz laid out the game script, right? If they're smashing the Commanders at home, then Pacheco doesn't have to even do that much, because even like last week, right? Was that like his breakout game? He was RB15, right? So you're not like
57 rushing yards.
Yeah.
You're like,
yeah. So if that's like the ceiling, it's on, especially on this week. Well, you'll take it, right? That's all I need. I think he's a locked, loaded RB2, strong start. Not going to bust this week. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe if he scores multiple touchdowns, then okay, now you're cooking with gas, and that obviously can be influenced by Kareem Hunt. If he doesn't play, then I think I would probably even move up Pacheco a little bit more. Last 2 weeks, he has 6 red zone attempts to Kareem Hunt's 1.
Do you have, I think, Fitz, you said you have Pacheco over Bill Krosky-Mara. Is that correct?
1 spot higher, yes.
Erickson, do you have Pacheco over Krosky?
Yes.
Okay, so unanimous. There you go. All right, we've got running back threes, 25 through 36 coming up, but a little bit of offer time for you. Dominate your fantasy football league with Fantasy Pros Premium. Now available free for 6 months when you deposit and place your first wager with one of our partner sportsbooks. This is the easiest way to get access to our top fantasy tools all season long. So go to fantasypros.com/premium to get started. RB3s, 25 through 36, the big board. Chuba Hubbard coming in at 25, followed by Tony Pollard, Tyler Algier, Woody Marks, Tyjae Spears at 29, Nick Chubb at 30. There's Kyle Monangai at 31, RJ Harvey, Kenny Gainwell, Rashard Smith, Isaiah Davis, and Tyrone Tracy. Oof. Tony Pollard, yeah, is right. There's a lot of we could talk about. I look at Isaiah Davis and it's like, that's where we're at. That's what we're doing here. I feel like we're falling out of favor with Tony Pollard. We had a question on one of the live streams this week, early in the week, that said, should I drop Tony Pollard for Tyjae Spears? The snap percentages were close. Kind of feels like with where this team is heading, this might be going in favor of Tyjae Spears. I just don't know if you can make that move. Those two are within 4 spots of each other on ECR. You guys are both lower on Tony Pollard. He's 26. Fitz, you got him at 28. Erickson, you're down at 31. So A, what level of trust is Tony Pollard as a top 30? And B, 0. There you go. Now B, do you like Tyjae Spears over Tony Pollard this week and rest of season?
I don't like either running back. I don't want anyone on this team. I'm sorry, that's not.
Yeah, which
answer.
Titan do you like? Do you like any?
Oh, because I don't want
the
any of these
no.
guys. The answer is no. I don't want any of these guys on my team, anywhere near my roster. And yeah, you want Tyjae Spears over Tony Pollard? Be my guest. But the next week, Spears is going to have more targets. Because like last week was so weird because Spears was like locked and loaded into this receiving role. And then in the fourth quarter in total garbage time, Tony Pollard is out there catching all these passes. He caught four passes in a row on the Titans' final drive. Before that, he had basically done nothing the entire game against the New England Patriots. The opportunities have been in Pollard's favor the last 2 weeks. He's had 12 opportunities in each game. Spears has had 9 in each game. So it's close to a 50-50 split, but Pollard has been seeing a little bit more. I don't want either of these guys. They're both outside the top 30 for me, and I guess if you really wanted to ask me like rest of season, the best bet is probably you're kind of like hoping that one of these guys gets banged up, and then the other guy just takes over as the 80% snap share running back. And look, Tyjae Spears just doesn't have a great track record of staying healthy, right? So like that's my only like hesitance about you got to just drop Pollard and pick up Spears, because what is Spears doing that's so amazingly great that they're going to bench Tony Pollard, who they paid? I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. So I don't want either of these guys.
And if they hadn't paid, maybe he'd have a little bit more trade equity. He'd just move on with new regime and stuff like that, but just not sure that's going to happen. Fitz, what's your take on Tony Pollard this week?
Erickson said it perfectly. I mean, obviously we're in the soup here when we're talking about 50-50 backs on the Tennessee Titans, the worst team in the NFL. I want to rank Tyjae Spears higher than Tony Pollard, because Tony Pollard has been such a fantasy dullard for the entire season. Even when he had that backfield to himself, like he couldn't convert that into fantasy value. Frustrating. And I would have had Tyjae Spears ranked higher this week if not for that final series that Erickson was just talking about. And I had to start Tony Pollard in a couple of leagues last week, and it looked like it was going to be an absolute washout of a fantasy day for Pollard. And he kind of salvaged something out of it by playing in that 2-minute role. And I'm like, wait a second, I thought Tyjae Spears was going to be the 2-minute back for the Titans. So now I'm pretty confused about what the usage is going to look like for these two guys. I don't want to use either guy if I can help it. So even though Spears is, I think, the more dynamic guy and the better candidate to be the passing down back, I feel obligated to rank Pollard slightly higher than Spears this week.
Well, an interesting debate that can happen in here. One of you likes this running back, Monangai, over Tony Pollard. The other does not. But regardless of that, you guys both like Monangai more than ECR. He's in at 31, probably at the tippy top. Obviously, he could have been picked up weeks ago in spots, but I think he was the dominant waiver guy this week as he was able to pop off. Fitz, you've got him at 29. Erickson, you've got him at 26. Fitz, you are the one that does not have Monangai above Tony Pollard. I'm not sure that really says anything because we're kind of in the mud now, but what do you think about Monangai in this Bears offense moving forward?
Well, the Bears got a really run-friendly game script last week against the Saints. They led for most of the game, and it was a very windy day in Chicago. So Monangai had 14 carries for 81 yards and a touchdown and added a couple of catches. I like Monangai a lot. Like, I loved him at Rutgers. I mean, this guy has the heart of a warrior. Not big, not fast, doesn't catch a lot of passes, but he's just really hard to bring down, and he always seems to make the right decision in traffic. We can't count on another 14 carries for Monangai this week. DeAndre Swift is still the lead guy, and the Bears are 6.5-point underdogs in Baltimore. The game script might not be as run-friendly this week, but the Ravens' run defense has been pretty bad. I know that's been injury related and they might get some of their guys back this week, but they're not getting all of the guys back. Matabuike is still out. And I think with a favorable matchup, Monangai is potentially flex worthy in a week with 6 teams on bye.
Erickson, you do have Monangai above Tony Pollard. Do you think the tides are turning in favor of Monangai, or is he at least going to be able to hold up, flex appeal, which is probably like you need like 10 touches?
Yeah, I do. I like the matchup, and that's what I want to embrace. Even in committee running backs, when it's a 1A, 1B backfield, if a matchup is positive, you can sometimes start the secondary running back. So I am kind of biting into that with Monangai. And you look at what they've done this season. Who has more RB1 finishes this year? Monangai over Tony Pollard. He has 1. Tony Pollard has 0. So who has more upside? You're not going to find upside in Tennessee. I can tell you that much. So I'll roll the dice with Kyle Monangai, even if the floor is not as high, with Pollard just probably a lock for a higher snap share. Play for upside. Give me the Bears running back.
I think this is it's a good synopsis of where this last one we're going to talk about and why you're taking this player. RJ Harvey, is he going to be worthwhile? Because he really hasn't been at any point this season. He's ECR RB 32. It's a good matchup. It's Dallas, and I think that probably breeds to it a little bit as well. You guys are on opposite ends. Fitzy's a little bit lower than ECR at 34. Erickson, you've got at 27, so he's one spot lower than Monangai. Is it the same concept? When you're in these like mid to late 20s, are you just playing pure upside? Because we have not seen volume from Harvey. It just doesn't exist. J.K. Dobbins is too much of a force, but they're getting Harvey a little bit more involved. They like to get him involved in the passing game. Is this just a pure, we know the upside play? Because there's not a great floor for RJ Harvey.
Yep, just pure upside play. You want pieces of this Dallas Broncos game, right? Should be a high-scoring contest. Every game with Dallas seems like it's fun and inviting for fantasy football success. Are all these guys going to hit from Franklin, Mims, Harvey? No. But if one of them hits in a big way, well, that's going to be the difference in whether you win or lose your week. And I'm willing to shoot for the moon with a player like this because every Broncos player has usage problems, right? Except Cortland Sutton. He's like the only guy you can actually rely on weekly, whereas everybody else, and I would say J.K. Dobbins is pretty reliable too. But I mean, Kenny Clark got injured. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys run defense was already terrible, and now they just lost one of their starting defensive tackles with Kenny Clark. So if he misses this game, I mean, it's wheels up, and then it's just a bet on, okay, RJ Harvey, explosive pass catcher. If there's negative game script, maybe you see Harvey get more involved in the passing game. I know that didn't really work out last week, although he did catch a touchdown. So, yeah, give me the explosive rookie.
Fitz, you have been 34. Number 34 on ECR is Rashad Smith. People are going to be forced into starting him this week. Who do you like better, RJ Harvey or Rashad Smith?
I think I have Rashad Smith. No, I've RJ Harvey ranked one spot higher, RB 34 versus RB 35. And Erickson just used the phrase wheels up, and I feel like it's wheels up, sort of like the little model planes that people fly at the park for RJ Harvey.
Where the wheels never actually go down, by the way. They're just permanently up, and they're little tiny baby ones. Yes, I like this analogy.
Yeah, because RJ Harvey has played under 30% of the offensive snaps in each of his last 3 games, and last week he actually played one fewer snap than Tyler Bidet. So the matchup against Dallas, yes, it looks really good, but man, with that usage, it's just, I get it, but he's a Hail Mary start in a deep league in a 16 bye week. That's it.
There's a lot of Hail Mary starts with the bye weeks and the injuries and the adjustments that are going on. So we know you guys are going to have a ton of more fantasy questions. And that is why we got the weekly Start and Sit live stream. It's on our YouTube channel where you can come and ask whatever. And I know there's going to be a million of the RB stuff. Whatever RB questions you have, Start and Sit, we're here for you. Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern. If you're on the podcast, youtube.com/fantasypros. That's youtube.com/fantasypros. Subscribe, click on the bell, get notified, and come and hang out in our weekly live streams. That is going to do it for the Week 8 ranks. For Pat Fitzmaurice and Andrew Erickson, I'm Chris Welsh. We'll talk to you next time right here on Fantasy Pros.